meeting to and relish in that, well, not everything on this Monday, but the weather is going to be good. And Wednesday will be a question. And the only other thing that I can say, I guess, about yesterday is that I'm glad I decided to drive back at halftime and listen on the radio rather than stay home and watch and then have to drive back in the dark. So that was the bright spot. We'll open our meeting this morning with a request for bill introductions, and Representative Baker, you have one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's 22 RS 2575, and it's a bill that requires that counties post on their website the total compensation of all elected officials in the county and city.
So the county posts both on their website, or they each post on their own website?
This bill says county, but more than likely the city would post it on theirs and the county would post theirs.
Okay. And is this bill being introduced in behalf of anyone?
No.
Introduced by you?
It is introduced by me.
Okay. Okey-doke.
At the request of some constituents.
Okay. We have, if there are no objections, we'll consider the bill introduced. Any objections? Not? The bill is introduced. Thank you, Representative Baker. Any other bill introductions? Okay. Well, that'll be up on our agenda for Wednesday, so if there are any, we'll still have that opportunity to do this. Today, we are going to have a hearing on House Bill 2568, and actually the fiscal note for this bill came in this morning, so it's posted online, and then we will have, if there's any questions on it, or it probably will be brought up too about the amount, since this bill came from the Office of the State Bank Commissioner, and that's who the impact is on. And David, can you start out with a bill brief on House Bill 2568?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. House Bill 2568 makes amendments to the Kansas Mortgage Business Act. Primarily, the amendments are to allow for a certain mortgage business to be conducted remotely, so be able to do the mortgage business at remote locations. Section 1 is the amends KSA 9-2201. This is the definition section of the Mortgage Business Act. Deletes the definition of application and bona fide office, but then it adds a new definition for mortgage loan application and remote location, and then change the definition of branch office, mortgage company, and principal place of business. Section 2 is really what is the part of the bill that actually allows for the mortgage business to be conducted at remote locations. There are 7 criteria that have to be met by the mortgage company, the licensee, to allow for these things, including they would not be able to meet with the public at a personal residence. There'd be no business records maintained at the remote location. The company would need written policies and procedures for working at the remote location and supervise and enforce such policies and procedures. The company would have to maintain the computer system and customer information with the company's IT security plan and with all state and federal laws. Any device used to engage in mortgage business would have to have the appropriate security, encryption, and device management controls to ensure security and confidentiality of customer information as required by rules and regulations adopted by the Bank Commissioner. The company's employees or contractors have to take reasonable precautions to protect confidential information. And the company would have to annually review and certify that the employees or independent contractors meet the requirements of Section 2, and upon request of the Commissioner would provide written documentation of their review to the Commissioner. Section 3 removes the requirement that a mortgage company submit separate applications for the company's principal place of business and each branch office. Instead, it would just have one application, so they wouldn't have to do it for all their branches, just be one application. And Section 4 adjust the license and registration expiration rule and reinstatement requirements and dates. Each license and registration would expire December 31 of each year. A license shall be renewed by filing with the Commissioner a complete renewal application and non-refundable renewal fee by December 1st of each year. Applications received after December 1 or that are incomplete may be assessed a late fee. An expired license may be reinstated through the last day of February by filing a reinstatement application and paying application and late fees. And the Commissioner may designate such late fees for consumer education to be expended for the purpose of consumer education as directed by the Commissioner. Section 5 removes the requirement that each licensed location make available evidence of licensure to consumers and the general public. And then Section 6 amends the requirement that each applicant or licensee file a $100,000 surety bond with the Commissioner instead of, under current law, there is a $50,000 bond for licensees who maintain a bona fide office and a $100,000 bond for licenses that do not maintain a bona fide office. So this would just be a straight $100,000 for every licensee bond. The section also requires applicants and licensees to submit evidence that they are solvent and shall at all times maintain a positive net worth. The section deletes the current requirement that evidence of the net worth be accompanied by a written statement by an independent CPA that the balance sheet or financial statement has been reviewed in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And then finally, Section 7 makes amendments to require that a licensee provide written notice to the Commissioner when they are adding or closing a branch office. And I'd be happy to stand for any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for David? Representative Burkamp?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Do you know where the $300 fee is at in statute? I couldn't find it anywhere in the bill.
It might not be in this particular section of the bill. It's probably somewhere within another section of the Mortgage Business Act. I don't have that off the top of my head, but yeah, it's probably just in a different section. It just didn't get amended here. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for David? Thank you, David. We'll open our hearing with the proponent testimony, and we have from the Office of the State Bank Commissioner, our first one is Melissa Wangeman, General Counsel, and she is remote today because of some technical difficulties with her car. And Melissa, had been looking forward to seeing you because this is your last day at the Bank Commissioner's office, and we wanted to have this hearing that you could present, but we'll watch you remotely. So welcome to committee, Melissa. Melissa, I think you're mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am so sorry I cannot appear in person. I was looking forward to being there and talking to you one last time before I take a corporate counsel position at Federal Home Loan Bank. So I do apologize, but I had a flat tire about a half mile from my house, and a Good Samaritan was kind enough to air it up just enough to turn back around and go home because I thought that was the safest thing to do. So I am appearing as a proponent today on House Bill 2568. And I will be very short because I'm going to let the expert speak instead of me, and that's our Assistant Deputy and Director of Examinations, Jim Payne. But the main point I wanted to make about House Bill 2568 is it was a collaborative effort between the Bank Commissioner's Office and the mortgage industry. We started talking probably a year ago about amending the Kansas Mortgage Business Act, which is the state law governing mortgage business. And I think the committee would be happy to hear that House Bill 2568 reduces government. The bill reduces the level of licensing by our office over the mortgage industry. And a secondary purpose of the bill is to allow mortgage company staff to work remotely. Many states, including Kansas, worked with mortgage companies during the pandemic to allow remote work. And so House Bill 2568 codifies the written guidance that our office developed during the pandemic to allow for remote work. So those are the only points I really wanted to make. And like I said, I'll let the expert in the office testify to more of the substance of the bill.
Any questions for Melissa on her last time here in the committee? Melissa, I assume that I noticed the fiscal note was like 402,000 from reduced licensing, that that's probably been accounted for in the State Bank Commissioner's office to deal with that. Said it wasn't reflected in the current budget, but I know that this is moves in the way that things are moving across the country. So, but I assume that that is not going to be a major hit.
No, it is not, and that is because we have worked with industry to balance our fees and create a neutral impact. They've agreed to a fee increase that will be produced in Kansas administrative regulation, and I'm sure Jim can explain it a little bit more. But yes, we've talked with industry, and it's really a shifting of fees. I'm trying to think which direction it goes. I think it's a little bit positive with the fee increase in regulation, but we'll be eliminating the branches and branch fees and increasing the loan originator fees. So in the end, there's a balance that's not reflected in the fiscal note, because of course the fiscal note only examines the statutory change and not the regulatory change, not the regulation change.
Okay. Any other questions for Melissa? Melissa, maybe some questions afterwards, but best wishes to you at the Federal Home Loan Bank, and hope we see you around a little bit.
Thank you.
Our next proponent is from the Office of State Bank Commissioner, Jim Payne, Assistant Deputy Director of Examinations. And Jim, welcome to committee.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Chairman Kelly and members of the committee. I am Jim Payne, working with the Office of the State Bank Commissioner. I am currently the Assistant Deputy and Director of Examinations, and I have been with the office and management since 2010. Split half of my time between compliance examinations and the other half in licensing. So I'm happy to be here today and appreciate the opportunity to speak in support of HB 2568. As I said, I've been in both examinations and licensing, and today I'd like to provide a perspective of how this changes predominantly the licensing structure of the office and the statute, and what impact it will have. Our office reviews applications for mortgage companies for licensure. We educate them on state and federal compliance issues, and we conduct compliance examinations periodically. We do have a good rapport with our industry members, and as Melissa mentioned, this has been well vetted with those members as well. As COVID-19 pandemic came on all of us in 2020 in March, Kansas and other states reacted very quickly to ensure that the mortgage market continued to operate effectively, given the challenges faced by many. Our office issued guidance to the industry and provided certainty around remote operations. We offered a pathway to allow companies to stay in business with minimal interruption to serve the public as loan demand boomed. We aim to codify the guidance to make it clear that remote operations are allowed as long as certain precautions are taken. Clarity in the statutes is paramount for both the industry and the office. In licensing, I've answered many inquiries over the years about how the law works, what the agency expects, what business decisions might have on compliance, and the like. Clarity in the KMBA will alleviate the need for companies to continually approach the agency on this issue of remote work. It'll save time and resources, creating efficiencies for all involved. The market performs better when the expectations are clear and when laws are modernized to meet the market where it is, and much of it today is digital. Branch licensing, on the other hand, in the OSBC looks much like other states. We have an application process with a fee. We review the address of the location, the date operations began, and so forth. The risk is low in approving branch licensure because a company has a main company license that's already been approved and vetted. It's pretty run-of-the-mill on branch licensing. If HB 2568 passes, the OSBC will have more time to focus on issuing, amending, and renewing main company license and the increasing mortgage loan originator licenses. Mortgage loan originators are people, individuals that are engaged in the mortgage business, and they have a license. So there's really a three-part structure: a main company license, a branch license, and if they're originating, a loan originator registration. So we're going from 3 to 2. With the same protection we've always had. The main company is responsible for all business conducted on its behalf. As for examinations, the examiners will have all the information they've always had: the office location, the branch manager, the volume and type of business conducted through our examination contacts. HB 2568 will have no impact on mortgage examination procedures or outcomes. The state will know where and when the transactions occurred, just as with branch licensing, because call reports are performed at the main company level. So as I stated earlier, the bill aims to allow and codify the remote work guidance that was issued. It removes the need to license a branch. However, branches will still be recorded, and we will know where the locations are. It won't reduce branching. The companies, if anything, it may have an increase in the number of branches because we've eased up on the requirement to license each and every location. So, in addition, the other issues that were modified, the surety bonding and the financial requirements were modified in relation to the branch licensing so that companies would have a simpler avenue into the state to conduct business. So surety bonding, not required at the branch level. It never has been. It's always been a main company issue. Has been, everybody will pay the same bond of $100,000 that most pay today. And the financial statement will be determined by the commissioner. What is satisfactory determined by the commissioner, as it has always been, without a firm requirement that there is an audited statement. And to clarify the fee issue, we did increase, as Melissa said, the mortgage loan originator fees from 50 to 100 with industry support. So the same industry is paying the fee, just shifting it to a different, the registration versus the license. So the increase is expected to bring in somewhere in the neighborhood of $450,000 on the additional loan originator fees. So it covers the $400,000 decrease in branch fees plus a little extra. And the extra, we're not even sure how much that may be, because even a 10% reduction in loan originators for this next year might bring that down 30 or 40,000. We saw a lot of mortgage loan originators enter in 20 and 21 as a result of the additional mortgage, but we always see up and down figures on loan originators. So we're expecting this to be essentially a wash in terms of revenue. And with that, I'll stand for any questions at the appropriate time.
Any questions for Mr. Payne? Representative Poskin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On that loan originator fee, is that something that can be passed on directly to the consumer as a line item in their closing?
It is not.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Burkamp?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple questions, if you'll permit. I guess I'm not too familiar with the process, so just trying to get a little bit more information. Do you guys, so it sounds like you guys don't review individual originators. It's more like at the company level that you do your due diligence when it comes to if they're complying to statutes?
It is both. There, for instance, there are background checks on originators as well as company officers. So the background checks for the company officers are at the company level. At the loan originator level, they're on the person that will actually be originating the loan.
And I guess part of my thought process is we've seen a dramatic increase in loan originators. I think the state said it went from like 80% increase year over year, which I assume again is driven by the demand for either refinancing or new loans. But I guess, do you guys feel you have enough ability to review all these, or again, are these all working for like Rocket Mortgage or Zillow, et cetera, big companies who are already again being reviewed by you guys?
Sure. Yeah, we did make some changes in the office to shift our licensing staff is currently 4 full-time analysts. We shift people depending on the demand of applications. So currently, we've got 2 focused on mortgage loan originators because they are high in volume. We also regulate this industry with other states through the nationwide mortgage licensing system. So when somebody, and federal law passed at the end of 19 that allowed somebody some reciprocity from state to state. So if the person's already had a background check conducted and we know that they're SAFE Act compliant, that's the federal law, is the floor, the state can impose additional restrictions. Those people get temporary authority until they've tested and educated themselves to join the market. So that has helped as well. But it's also led to higher numbers, so we had to shift.
And just kind of general comment, I know in here, I think under section 2, I just doubt this happens, but it says no physical business records are maintained at the remote location, which I don't know. Knowing this building, I doubt that that happens, but I just hope that all these originators are careful with people's information, because I assume a lot of times they just throw it in the trash as opposed to straightening it properly or something like that. So just a thought from my side. Thank you.
So yeah, to that effect, what we typically see is things are done remotely via computer and with disabled printing. So many times a loan originator working from home, for instance, is unable to print any material. Things are secured by remote access into a server that's in a different city.
Any other questions? Representative Weigel?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. Maybe you've answered this. Does the State Banking Commissioner's Office require, or do they have rules in place that branch locations have to perform the same services as their central or their main banking facility? And if there are, I mean, is there any difference the way they can conduct business on a day-to-day business? I don't know if I explained that correctly.
It sounds like you're asking if there are a restriction to perform the same function as a main company license at the branch, or would there be any additional possibility of a different business functions that aren't covered at the branch or the main company level?
Correct.
Okay. The answer to that is no. So anything that's done at the main company level is also able to be done at each branch, and anything at the branch company level that's allowed would have to be allowed at the main company level as well. So the branch licensing is more akin to knowing where the business is conducted and, you know, by whom. If you ask for a branch manager, for instance, we will still get that information, as I stated earlier, but the authorized business is the same between main company and branch.
Okay. Well, when you were talking about this, what came to my mind was that, and it's been my experience, that some banking facilities, banks, as far as lending for a home loan or mortgage, they'll say, well, you have to come to our main branch to do that, or you can start the paperwork here, but you have to end up down here. So I was just wondering if there were any rules or regs or stipulations on, especially on that thing alone.
Sure. It is not that way in the non-bank industry for mortgage companies. It may be that way in banking, but I'm not an expert with banking regulations. So we're talking, this will only impact non-mortgage or non-bank mortgage business. Okay. And currently that is not the reality.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Don't see any. Thank you, Mr. Payne, very much.
Thank you.
Our next proponent, kind of a blast from the past here, Luke Bell, Senior Manager, Government Relations and Public Affairs for Zillow. Welcome back, Luke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just remarking, I did not have the chance to get in the building last year, and I missed it due to COVID, so very happy to be back here. So I live in the Kansas City area, so that's why I took the opportunity to drive down today. So I'm happy to be here on behalf of Zillow. Zillow, of course, is the online real estate and tech company. Reaches roughly 230 million monthly active users who are looking to buy, sell, rent, or finance their next home. So as part of our efforts, we are proud to operate Zillow Home Loans, which is why we have interest in this particular bill. Zillow Home Loans is based out of Overland Park, Kansas. Even though we are headquartered in Seattle and other parts across the country, Zillow Home Loans is actually headquartered and based in Overland Park, Kansas. We employ 55 licensed mortgage loan personnel in the state, and we have roughly 230 employees that work either in the Overland Park office or remotely in connection in the area with the Overland Park office. So we do have a very large presence here in Kansas. We would also, of course, like to commend the Office of the State Bank Commissioner. As you well know, this has not been easy over the last 3 years trying to run a business in light of shutdown orders and various other things we've had to navigate through. A big part of what my team does on the government relations side was help our compliance staff track who can come in the office, what offices are closed, what jurisdictions are under shutdown orders, where do our employees live, various things. So being able to work with the regulator and getting that consistency and that certainty has been key in terms of when we bring our mortgage loan officers back in the office and when they, frankly, can continue to work remotely as the overwhelming majority of them would prefer to continue to work remotely. So prior to the pandemic, of course, most state statutes and regulations, in many cases enacted decades ago, required mortgage loan officers to work from physical licensed branch office locations. Due to the pandemic and due to basically the experiences and the learnings we have received throughout the pandemic and the common sense regulatory flexibility that we were able to work with the regulators on during the pandemic, we have realized that you can still run a very effective mortgage business and a compliant mortgage business and safeguard consumer protections while you have your employees working in remote locations. The technology is there, the policies and procedures are in place. Working with the regulator's office, it has been extremely effective. We have a very large compliance team that deals only with these issues. In fact, one of the leaders of that team actually used to work in the Office of the State Bank Commissioner and now helps run our mortgage compliance division. And speaking to the technology and the access and the ability of remote mortgage loan originators to access sensitive information, I am also a remote employee. I follow the same security protocols. So not only are you required to log in via virtual private network, a VPN, there's two-factor authentication requirements. You're not allowed to insert flash drives in your computer and download documents to that flash drive. You're not allowed to print certain sensitive documents. There's all sorts of access restrictions. Those are the types of security systems and safeguards that we have put in place to ensure that sensitive customer information is protected when people are working from remote locations. So because of what we have done, thankfully, the critically important financial services that our companies provide did not have to shut down during the pandemic. Thankfully, millions of Americans were able to either buy a home or refinance their mortgages into historically low mortgage interest rates over the course of the pandemic. And we were able to continue to keep the doors open and serve Kansans and other people. So we would strongly support the provisions of this bill. As I mentioned previously, our employees have worked effectively remotely. They want to continue to work remotely, just like other professions are allowed to do so. We believe there is adequate consumer protection and safeguards built in to the existing law. Working with the OSBC, we are very confident we'll be able to protect sensitive customer information, ensure that our employees are highly regulated in the mortgage business activities they offer. And just one more thing I wanted to touch on as we think about this bill. If you think not only about mortgage companies, but you also think about the mortgage loan originators who work for those companies. Previous to remote work ability, in order to work for a company like ours, you had to live within a commutable distance of a licensed branch office. In Kansas, that means you had to live within basically probably an hour drive of Overland Park. Once this change happens, you can live anywhere and practice those skills. So not only in Overland Park, but you can also live in my hometown of Medicine Lodge, Kansas, in South Central Kansas. As long as you have a reliable internet connection, you can practice your business and you can engage in the business of mortgage business as a licensed professional, and that opens up the flexibility and economic opportunity for you everywhere in the state of Kansas to practice this profession, as opposed to having to live within a commutable distance of a current office. So we do think this opens up new opportunities. Remote work is the future. A lot of people are embracing it. I've done it for 3 years, and I don't ever want to work in an office again. I enjoy the flexibility. I don't have to sit and listen to those extraneous conversations around the water cooler every day. I think I'm more productive. So we appreciate your consideration of the bill. We have enjoyed working with the Office of the State Bank Commissioner on this bill. They've been very open-minded and willing to listen to our questions and concerns, and we do think this is a very good piece of legislation. So I appreciate the opportunity, Mr. Chairman, and I would be happy to stand for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Bell? Representative Baker?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Medicine Lodge, are you up helping on a ranch out there by any chance right now?
My parents live on a very small cow-calf operation. I would not call it a ranch, but yeah.
They could always use a little help. So, kind of what would the fees normally run on a transaction on a mortgage? The dollar amounts on a $500,000, that's an average price of a house in Johnson County. What would
that'll be broken up into various numbers broken down on your closing statement. The origination fee is generally, of course, the largest part of that goes directly to the mortgage loan company. And then, of course, there'll be various other settlement fees that you have to pay as part of your closing statement. The origination fee varies by company. It kind of depends. But it is, of course, disclosed at the front end of your process. When you're applying for mortgage loans, you'll receive that good faith estimate, which will list out all of the fees you will incur. At the end of the process, you'll receive your final closing statement, and it will show if any of the fees have changed and what your final total will be due.
What would that dollar amount, an example of that dollar amount, what would that be?
I am actually not familiar. I know somebody with Rocket is testifying as well. It's been a long time since I've done a mortgage. I bought my house 3 years ago. I think I paid $800 to $900 at that time. I'm pretty sure.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Poskin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mr. Bell. Your Overland Park office is located in House District 20.
Very cool.
That I represent. One thing we saw over the pandemic was, especially in Johnson County, homes selling very quickly and for over the asking price. What was your experience or your originator's experiences in trying to help home buyers be competitive in that? Would this legislation either continue the advantage there, or was there one?
So the market, of course, has been challenging, especially in some of the larger urban markets. Inventory is extremely tight. Prices have increased at a very rapid pace. It has turned into definitely a very competitive seller's market. Most homes that are reasonably priced sell very quickly, and a lot of them have multiple offers. So, yeah, it has been competitive. Thankfully, throughout the course of the pandemic, our mortgage loan officers were allowed to continue to work and to continue to finance those transactions, because in that situation, you have a lot of people who are coming in and bidding cash. You have a lot of people, of course, who cannot afford to buy a home with cash and have to obtain a mortgage. So allowing people to move quickly through the process, get pre-approved, put themselves in a competitive position to make a competitive offer on that house is very important. I think, this bill will definitely do nothing to harm the effectiveness of our mortgage loan officers. It'll do nothing to weaken those consumer protections and safeguards. Yeah, and if anything, like I said, working remotely, I am infinitely more productive than I was when I worked in an office. You're living in the Kansas City area, you will love the 4:35 commute every morning. I just did that today, and I don't miss it. Yeah, I think it will do nothing to hurt kind of the speed and efficiency which they need to work with to serve people in this market.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, thank you, Luke. Nice to have you back.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Our next proponent will be remote, and it's Michael Stedman, Director, Regulatory Affairs, Rocket Mortgage. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Chairman Kelly and members of the committee. Again, my name is Michael Stidham. I'm the Director of Regulatory Affairs for Rocket Mortgage, and I want to thank you all for the opportunity to provide testimony today in support of House Bill 2568. Rocket Mortgage appreciates the opportunity to offer this testimony in support of the proposed amendments to the Kansas Mortgage Business Act, which would eliminate the need for a mortgage company to apply for a separate license for each branch location and allow its staff to work remotely. Not sure if you all know, but Rocket Mortgage is a Detroit-based national home mortgage lender who enables the American dream of home ownership and financial freedom through its obsession with an industry-leading, digital-driven client experience. In 2020, Rocket Mortgage closed $320 billion of mortgage volume across all 50 states. Today, Rocket Mortgage and Rocket Companies employ 24,000 full-time team members nationwide. Rocket Companies, Rocket Mortgage's parent company, ranked 5th on Fortune's list of the 100 best companies to work for in 2021 and has placed in the top third of that list for 18 consecutive years. Today, Rocket Mortgage maintains and renews 105 licensed branch locations within the state of Kansas. And with this bill, significant improvements will be made to the licensing requirements regulated by the Office of the State Bank Commissioner. The removal of separate branch licenses provides a more efficient process for mortgage companies like a Rocket Mortgage to conduct business in Kansas while maintaining OSBC's integral regulatory oversight of mortgage companies. By requiring the mortgage company to hold one master license as opposed to several individual branch licenses, the bill streamlines the licensing process to promote versatility and efficiency in the mortgage business. And ultimately, by removing this cost for mortgage companies, our industry as a whole can pass these savings onto Kansas consumers. In the wake of COVID-19 pandemic, many states, along with Kansas, responded with forward-thinking innovation to help mortgage companies continue to provide important financial services to consumers by removing restrictions to allow the remote work. With guidance from OSBC, Rocket Mortgage was able to continue to provide essential financial services to its Kansas consumers while keeping its employees safe. This bill codifies the written guidance, making remote work a permanent option while maintaining standards and expectations around consumer safety and data security. So in sum, we appreciate the committee's leadership on this matter. And with this bill, Kansas will help lead the industry in streamlining mortgage licensing by removing the individual branch license requirement and making the ability to work remotely permanent. So if you have any questions now, I'd love to take them, or you could always contact myself at 313-946-1699 with any follow-up questions, or email me at michaelstidham@rocketmortgage.com.
Thank you, Mr. Stidham. We do have a question here, Representative Shu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your testimony. You mentioned just a couple moments ago that with the removal of this fee, you can pass on the savings to consumers. Can you outline how you plan on doing that?
It's a great question. I think Mr. Payne had pointed out earlier around the licensing fees, and while the licensing fees are not, they're not huge fees, we're always looking to pass any savings that we acquire through bills just like this to the consumer, because ultimately, in this case, it is the consumer that wins. So we'll be working closely with our compliance team, and what we'll simply do is we'll just adjust that probably off of the origination fee that all consumers pay when they engage with a mortgage loan originator in a mortgage transaction.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Representative Burkamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for your testimony, Michael. Do you have a ballpark figure how many employees Rocket added in Kansas the last couple of years?
As a matter of fact, I do. We have 26 current remote team members in the state of Kansas.
Okay, thank you. And then are loan originators just paid a base salary, or are they paid like per origination?
They're paid per origination.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Don't see any? Well, thank you very much, Mr. Stedman, for being here today and tuning in from remotely to the committee. And if there are any questions, we'll have them contact you. Our next proponent is from the Mortgage Bankers Association, Kobe Pruitt, Director, State Government Affairs, Mortgage Bankers Association. Welcome to committee, and he is remote also.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Can, yes.
Well, thank you again. My name is Kobe Pruitt. I'm the Director of State Government Affairs at the Mortgage Bankers Association. I'm here to speak on behalf of my organization, as well as more than 2,000 members that we serve, many of which operate in the state of Kansas. And we wanted to be here in support of the bill before the committee, which is HB 2568. NBA appreciates the opportunity to provide testimony before this committee regarding the bill that's before you that will permit Kansas licensed mortgage loan originators to work from away from a licensed location. In addition, I want to really say thank you to the Kansas Office of State Bank Commissioner for proposing this legislation, which is consistent with MBA's model state legislation and regulation that will allow for remote work. It's been a great journey on this remote work path. We've already had 11 states that have passed similar permanent legislation or regulations to allow for MLOs to work away from the licensed location, providing this additional flexibility. We would like to emphasize as well that Kansas mortgage industry regulators have already shown great leadership during the global pandemic by issuing remote work guidance that has helped our industry. These authorizations have been essential to protect the health and safety of real estate financial professionals in Kansas, as well as the consumers that they serve, who are looking to either buy, sell, or refinance their homes in Kansas. Most importantly, without putting themselves or family members at greater risk, this policy has allowed state licensed staff to help Kansans who lost their jobs or suffered income loss to stay in their homes during the mortgage forbearance and periods, and ultimately a sustainable post forbearance option. And while COVID is not going away in the near future, probably we hope for the best going forward. HB 2568 really represents an opportunity to apply the lessons that we learned from the pandemic to a post-pandemic economy and help all stakeholders for future national emergencies or local emergencies that may exist, regional national disasters that would require MLO to work with borrowers away from a licensed location. Furthermore, HB 2568 would allow mortgage lenders to better serve those in rural communities as well as communities of color, providing the flexibility for MLO to actually meet with the borrower away from the licensed location, because a branch-like location may have been difficult for either a rural borrower or a person in the community of color to actually go to that location to complete their requested financial transaction. HB 2568 provides protections for the health and safety of Kansas residents and permits mortgage lenders to effectively serve them. Moreover, the legislation provides for strong consumer data protection and does not in any way diminish the important state and federal consumer protection laws and rules. We're happy to see that the legislation includes requirements for encryption, VPNs, addresses custodial concerns about where to keep documents, as well as other issues regarding data protection. NBA looks forward to the opportunity to work with this committee and its members on legislation to support the passage of HB 2568, and I'll answer any questions that there may be. You can also contact me at kpruitt at nba.org if you have any other questions that you'd like to ask. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Pruitt. Any questions? Representative Baker?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your testimony. That was interesting. So I asked a question earlier about the numbers on a closing statement. Could you provide the committee a sample sometime of what a $500,000 transaction in a Johnson County home, kind of just a real life example of what those numbers would look like for the fees and mortgage registration and that group of things? Thank you.
Sure, I don't have those numbers with me, but that's something if the committee reaches out, we can see if we can numbers. We have a very large research department at NBA that can probably answer some of those questions.
Any other questions? I don't see any. Thank you, Mr. Pruitt, very much for being here remotely with us today. That is all of the oral proponent testimony that we have listed. Anyone else wish to testify as a proponent to House Bill 2568? Don't see any. I don't list any written proponents, so this will close the proponent portion of our testimony. We'll open the neutral portion. I show no one signed up to testify in person or no written neutral. Anyone wish to testify as neutral to House Bill 2568? If not, we'll close the neutral portion, open the opponent portion. I show no opponents listed as oral proponents and nor as written proponents. Anyone wish to testify as an opponent to 2568? If not, we'll close the opponent portion and we'll close the hearing on House Bill 2568. And our next committee meeting will be on Wednesday, and we'll may have many more attending remotely on Wednesday, just depending on what happens with the weather here. It doesn't look near as good as the 60s that are supposed to be around today. So but on Wednesday, we have looking at some housing issues on Wednesday with kind of a recap of a bill that we heard last year and look at some other things connected with it. So right now, thank you for being here today. Not as happy an occasion as last Monday was, but appreciate you being here today. And now that the football season is over in my regard, I guess we won't have to worry about that on Wednesday or any following Mondays. So we will meet again Wednesday, and we are adjourned.